It is the story of a man who wins the longest war of his time and then spends another 10 years trying to get home. His name is Odysseus, king of Ithaca, and when the war ends, he wants only one thing: to return to his island. But the sea stands in his way. On the voyage back, he faces storms that shatter ships, monsters that devour men, sorceresses who transform his crew, and the fury of a god. He loses his 12 ships one by one. He loses every last companion. And still he does not stop. His wife, Penelope, waits for him in Ithaca without knowing whether he is alive. His son, Telemachus, grows up unable to remember his father's face. For them, Odysseus is willing to cross the edge of the known world. His strength as a warrior is no longer enough. His only weapon is cunning. To understand why a king spends a decade crossing a single sea, you have to start where his story first goes wrong: the Trojan War. A 10-year war begins with an abduction. Paris, Prince of Troy, takes Helen, wife of Menelaus, king of Sparta. To get her back, the Greek kings unite under the command of Agamemnon, assemble the largest fleet the world has ever seen, and sail across the sea to besiege Troy, a city protected by walls no army has ever managed to breach. It is not a war of a single decisive clash, but 10 years of assaults, truces, and duels beneath the walls. The Greeks camp on the beach beside their ships. The Trojans hold out behind defenses that seem impossible to break. Kings and warriors of great renown meet in the open ground between the city and the sea, and the dead are counted in thousands. But no partial victory brings the end any closer, and the city does not fall to arms. In that time, the finest men on both sides are consumed. Achilles, the most feared warrior in the Greek army, hunts down Hector, the prince who holds Troy's defense together, and kills him in single combat. Shortly after, Achilles himself falls, brought down by an arrow. The war devours its heroes one after another and still refuses to be decided. When strength is not enough, cunning decides, and the most cunning man in the Greek army is Odysseus. The idea that ends the war is his, and it is as audacious as it is brilliant. The Greeks build an enormous wooden horse and conceal their best warriors inside. Then they burn their own camps, load the rest of the army onto the ships, and vanish behind a nearby island, pretending to surrender and sail home. The entire plan rests on a single gamble, that the Trojans, rather than burning the horse, will bring it inside the walls themselves. If they are wrong, the finest men in Greece will burn alive inside the wood. On the plain before the walls, the horse stands alone. The Trojans, who have endured the siege for an entire decade, believe the enemy has finally gone and that the figure is an offering to the gods. They debate what to do with it. Some are suspicious and want it destroyed. Others, seized by the euphoria of believing themselves free, want to bring it inside. In the end, they make the worst possible choice. They open the gates that were never broken by force and drag the horse themselves into the heart of the city. That night, Troy celebrates the end of the war. When the wine has taken the last men standing and the city falls silent, the belly of the horse opens. The hidden warriors descend in the darkness without a word. They slit the throats of the gate sentries and throw the gates wide. Outside, the Greek fleet has returned under cover of night, and the entire army enters Troy without meeting resistance. By the time the Trojans wake, the enemy is already inside the walls. They reach for their weapons too late, fighting scattered and blind, unable to tell where the attack is coming from or how many enemies are already moving through the city. There is no line to hold, no wall left to defend. The war of a full decade is decided in its own streets, house by house, in the confusion and the fire. Buildings burn, defenders fall in alleys already lost, and by dawn, all of Troy is a column of smoke rising above the coast. The Greeks load the spoils of war onto their ships: gold, weapons, captives. After 10 years, only one thing remains: going home. Odysseus commands 12 ships. On them sail the men of Ithaca who survived the war, men who have spent a decade dreaming of the island where they belong. The plan is simple: cross the Aegean, round the southern tip of Greece and point west. But the homecoming begins with blood. The first land they sight is Ismarus on the Thracian coast, the city of the Cicones, a people who had fought as allies of Troy during the war. For Odysseus's men, still hot from the sacking of Troy, it is not a detour, it is prey. They attack at dawn. The ships ground on the beach, the men leap into the sand, and they fall on the city before the Cicones can organize a defense. The fighting in the streets is fast and brutal. Gates broken down, defenders cut down as they rush out to meet them. The rest subdued. By midday, Ismarus is theirs. They divide the plunder and the captives among themselves, and for a moment it all looks like a clean victory. Odysseus knows the danger of lingering on enemy ground. He gathers his men at the ships and orders them to sail immediately. "Get to the ships. We have what we came for." But the men, drunk on wine and victory, ignore him. "One more night," they say. "The city is ours." There is too much wine in the storerooms of Ismarus, too many sheep and cattle on the shore. They light fires, slaughter the animals, and settle in to eat and drink by the sea, deaf to their king's warnings. It is a mistake they pay for dearly. The Cicones who escape the city do not simply flee. They run inland to the villages of the interior and return with their neighbors, more numerous and harder, men bred for war, fighters on chariots and on foot. At dawn, while many Greeks lie heavy with wine, they appear on the hills in numbers impossible to count. Odysseus wakes to shouting. There is barely time to take up arms. The men form a hurried line on the strip of sand between the sea and the city, shields close, spears forward, their backs to the beached ships. There is no ground to maneuver on, no hill to anchor to, only the beach, the enemy on one side and the water on the other. The Cicone chariots charge first and crash against the wall of shields, but the line holds. All morning the two masses of men shove against each other under the sun, spear against shield, bronze against bronze, without either side giving way. The noise is deafening, the clang of metal, shouts of command, the groaning of the wounded who fall and are trampled underfoot by both sides. The Greeks hold because they have nowhere to retreat. The Cicones press because with every hour more warriors descend from the hills. It is a war of attrition, and attrition favors the side with more men to spend. By midday, the Greek line still stands, but by late afternoon exhaustion and wounds begin opening gaps, and the Cicones see it. They concentrate every push exactly where the formation is thinning. The wall breaks at the center. From that moment, there is no battle, only flight. Odysseus shouts the order to fall back to the ships. The men break ranks and run for the water, clamber on board, and pull away from shore by force of oars under a hail of spears falling across the decks. Those who stumble or arrive too late go down on the wet sand, struck from behind as they reach for the hull of their ship. When the ships finally gain distance from the shore, Odysseus counts the dead. 6 men from each vessel have not come back. Dozens of companions who survived 10 years of war die at the first stop on the road home for disobeying a single order. The fleet does not pull away in silence. As custom demands, the survivors call out 3 times by name to every man left dead on the beach. Only then do they turn the prows back to open water. The sea does not let them go quietly. The moment the fleet reaches open water, the sky slams shut, and the north wind drops on the ships. The sails tear to strips, the masts bend under the pressure, and the waves rise until they blot out the horizon. The men lose sight of the coast, the sun, every point of reference. They row blind, not knowing which way they are going, held together only by Odysseus's voice shouting above the wind. Water pours in from every direction, and they bail without rest to keep from going under. They endure this for 2 full days and 2 full nights. On the 3rd day, the storm lets up. They think the worst is over. They raise the sails again, straighten the prows, and round Cape Malea, the southern tip of Greece, the last point of the known world before Ithaca. But at Malea, the current takes them again. Instead of rounding the cape toward home, the ships are dragged south, away from every coastline they know. For 9 days they sail without sighting land, carried by currents they cannot control or read. They ration the water and the food, watch a horizon that stays empty, and begin to understand that they are no longer sailing toward Ithaca. They are sailing wherever the sea decides to take them. Odysseus keeps order on board, but even he no longer knows which direction home lies. When the coast of Greece disappears entirely behind them, the last map they know disappears with it. Ahead lies only open sea, and shores no man from Ithaca has ever set foot on. After 9 days adrift, the fleet sights land. It is a low coast inhabited by a peaceful people, the Lotus Eaters. Odysseus distrusts the unknown. He drops anchor, goes ashore with part of his men, and sends 3 ahead to find out who lives there. The Lotus Eaters receive them without violence. They do not attack or threaten them. They offer their food, the fruit of the lotus. And there lies the danger hidden inside what looks like a gesture of hospitality. Whoever tastes the lotus loses the desire to return. He forgets his home, his mission, the road back. The 3 scouts eat, and at once they want nothing to do with the ships or with Ithaca, only to stay among the Lotus Eaters, eating lotus forever. Odysseus goes to find them and finds them lost, smiling, with no intention of moving. There is no way to reach them with words. He drags them back by force, weeping and resisting, ties them under the rowing benches, and gives the order before anyone else falls into the same trap. To the ships. No one else touches that fruit. They row hard to put distance between themselves and a land that kills not with weapons, but with forgetting. The next shore is very different. They come to the land of the Cyclops, giants with a single eye who live without laws, without assemblies, without cultivated fields. Each one inhabits his own cave alone and answers to no one. They neither sow nor build ships. The earth feeds them without effort, and that is enough. The fleet anchors first at a small island off the coast, thick with wild goats. The men hunt, eat well, and rest for the first time in a long while. But Odysseus stares at the land across the water, smoke rising, flocks moving on the hillsides, and curiosity wins out over caution. He takes a single ship and his best men and crosses to the Cyclops' shore. He brings with him a skin of wine, pure and very strong, a gift from a priest of Ismarus whose life he had spared. Wine so potent, it is drunk, diluted with 20 parts of water. It is the weapon he does not yet know he is carrying. On the coast they find an enormous cave ringed by a stone wall with pens inside, kids and lambs separated by age, bowls overflowing with milk and cheese. The owner is not there. The men understand the danger immediately and beg Odysseus to take what they can carry and flee before the owner returns. Load the cheeses and the lambs and get back to the ship. Let's go now, while we still can. But Odysseus wants to see the owner of the cave. He wants to know who he is, and he expects to receive from him the gifts a host owes to a guest. He orders them to stay, light a fire, and wait. At dusk, the owner returns and his shadow fills the cave. It is Polyphemus, son of Poseidon, a Cyclops taller than any man, with a single eye set in the middle of his forehead. He drives in his flock and seals the entrance with a rock so enormous that not 22 wagons could move it. The Greeks are locked inside with him. Polyphemus stirs the fire and, in its light, discovers the intruders. Who are you? Merchants or pirates who wander the sea robbing others? Odysseus answers carefully. He explains that they are Greeks returning from the Trojan War, lost at sea, and appeals to the sacred law of hospitality. Respect the gods. Zeus protects guests and punishes those who harm them. Polyphemus laughs. Cyclopes do not fear Zeus or any god. We are stronger than they are. He then asks where they have left their ship. Odysseus sees the intention and lies. He says the ship was wrecked on the rocks, and that they are the only survivors. In doing so, he protects the rest of the crew waiting on the island. For his answer, Polyphemus seizes 2 of the men, dashes them against the ground, and eats them right there in front of the others. Then he lies down among his flock and goes to sleep. Odysseus draws his sword and thinks of driving it in while the Cyclops sleeps, but he stops himself in time. If he kills Polyphemus, no one will be able to move the rock from the entrance, and they will all die trapped beside the corpse. Force is useless here. Something else is needed. At dawn, the Cyclops eats 2 more men, milks his flock, and goes out to pasture, sealing the cave again with the rock. The Greeks are trapped for the entire day, and Odysseus uses that time to build his plan. In a corner of the cave lies an olive trunk, green and as large as the mast of a ship. Odysseus cuts a length from it, sharpens one end to a point, and hardens that point in the fire until it is as hard as metal. They hide it under the manure on the cave floor. They draw lots to choose the 4 men who will drive the stake with him. Now there is only waiting. At dusk, Polyphemus returns, brings in the flock, and devours 2 more men. Then Odysseus makes the first move of his plan. He steps forward with a bowl of the powerful wine from Ismarus and offers it to him. Drink now that you have eaten man's flesh. Taste what we carried on our ship. Polyphemus drinks and loves it. He asks for more. He drinks a second time and a third. The undiluted wine begins to cloud his head. In good humor, he asks Odysseus his name and promises a guest gift in return. "My name is Nobody," answers Odysseus. "That is what everyone calls me. Nobody." "Then this is my gift to you, Nobody. I will eat you last, after all your companions." With that, the wine takes him. Polyphemus falls back drunk and sinks into sleep. This is the moment. Odysseus and his 4 men pull the olive stake from hiding and heat its point in the embers until it is nearly alight. Then, together they lift it and drive it with their full weight into the Cyclops' single eye, twisting it like a drill. The eye bursts. Polyphemus wakes with a roar that shakes the entire cave. He tears out the stake and hurls it away, blind and mad with pain, swiping through the darkness to catch the men who have already pressed themselves against the walls. His screams wake the other Cyclopes who come to the cave and call out from outside. "Is someone robbing you? Is someone trying to kill you?" "Nobody is killing me. Nobody is tricking me," Polyphemus roars from inside. The other Cyclopes turn away. If nobody is attacking him, they reason, then it must be a sickness sent by the gods. And against that, there is nothing to be done. They leave him alone with his pain. The trick of the name has just saved the Greeks' lives. But they are still trapped. Polyphemus, groping in the dark, shoves the rock aside and sits in the opening with his arms stretched wide, certain he will catch anyone who tries to slip out with the flock. Odysseus finds the way out. He ties the largest, woolliest rams together in groups of 3, and under the middle ram of each group he lashes one of his men, hidden in the legs and the fleece. For himself, he chooses the biggest ram of all and hangs face up beneath its belly, gripping the wool with both hands. At dawn, the flock moves toward the entrance to go to pasture. Polyphemus runs his hands along the back of each animal as it passes, making sure no one escapes riding on top. But his blind hand only touches the back, never the belly, and one by one the men pass through the entrance hanging underneath. The last to come out is the ram carrying Odysseus. Polyphemus stops him for a moment and speaks to him, puzzled that his favorite animal, always first, comes out last today. "Why do you come out last, you who always go first? Are you grieving for your master's eye, which a worthless man called Nobody gouged out?" The ram does not answer, and beneath its belly, Odysseus holds his breath until the animal crosses the threshold. Once outside, the men free themselves, drive part of the flock down to the ship, and board in haste. They row with everything they have to pull away from the shore. When they have put some distance between themselves and the coast, Odysseus cannot hold back his pride. He stands and shouts toward the shore, taunting the blinded Cyclops. Polyphemus, guided only by the voice, tears the top from a hill and hurls it into the sea. The rock lands just ahead of the ship and throws up a wave that nearly pushes them back to the shore. The men row frantically and beg Odysseus to be quiet. But Odysseus, still stung in his pride, makes his greatest mistake. He shouts his real name. "If anyone asks who blinded you, tell them it was Odysseus, son of Laertes, sacker of cities, king of Ithaca." And that name is exactly what Polyphemus needed. The Cyclops raises his arms to the sky and prays to his father, Poseidon, god of the sea. "Father, make it so that Odysseus of Ithaca never reaches home, and if it is fated that he must return, let him arrive late and ruined on a stranger's ship after losing all his companions, and let him find grief waiting inside his own house." Poseidon hears his son's prayer. From that moment on, the entire sea becomes Odysseus's enemy. The storms and the years of delay that will follow are born from the name he himself just shouted into the wind. Odysseus returns to the island of the goats, gathers the rest of the fleet and sets sail again, carrying fewer men for every meal the Cyclops took, and now carrying too the fury of the god who rules every stretch of water he still has to cross. The next land seems at last like an answer to all their misfortunes. It is an island that floats on the sea, ringed by a wall of bronze, and on it lives Aeolus, the man the gods have given command of all the winds. Aeolus receives Odysseus as a guest of honor. He houses him in his palace for an entire month and listens day after day to the full account of the Trojan War and the voyage home. The horse, the fall of the city, the Cicones, the Cyclops. The more he hears, the more he comes to care for his guest. And when Odysseus finally asks leave to depart, Aeolus not only grants it, he gives him a gift capable of ending the voyage in a single stroke. It is a bag made from the hide of an ox. Inside, Aeolus has sealed every wind that could drive the ship off course, bound shut with a cord of gleaming silver. Only one wind is left free, the west wind, the only one that blows straight toward Ithaca. Keep this bag sealed and you will reach home, Aeolus tells him. Do not open it for any reason, whatever happens. Odysseus ties the bag in the ship with his own hands and lets no one else touch it or ask what it contains. The west wind pushes the fleet steadily, smooth and constant, and everything goes better than at any point in the entire voyage. They sail for 9 days and 9 nights. Odysseus handles the sail himself, without rest, unwilling to trust it to anyone else, determined to bring his men home with his own hands. He does not sleep. The hours pile up, his eyelids grow heavy, but he does not let go of the rope. On the 10th day, Ithaca appears on the horizon. They are close enough to make out the fires of the herdsmen tending flocks on the coast. After all the years of war and sea, home is in sight, almost within reach. And then, broken by 9 days without sleep, at the very moment when the worst seems finally behind them, Odysseus gives out. For the first time in the entire voyage, he lets go of the sail and closes his eyes. It is exactly the moment his men have been waiting for. All those days they have watched the bag sideways, gnawing at themselves, convinced their king is hiding something. They have seen how he tied it alone, how he lets no one near it, and the suspicion has grown in silence. Now, with Odysseus asleep, they start to murmur among themselves. Everyone favors him. Everywhere they give him gifts. He comes home loaded with gold and silver from Aeolus, while we who row at his side go back with nothing. Let's see what he's keeping in there. We're owed a share. They untie the silver cord, and what escapes from the bag is not any treasure. It is every wind in the world unleashed all at once. A tempest erupts over the ship in an instant. The gusts seize them and tear them off course, dragging them out to sea while the coast of Ithaca sinks back into the horizon, before the eyes of men who a moment ago could already see themselves home. Odysseus wakes in the middle of the chaos and understands in an instant what has happened. For a moment he thinks of throwing himself into the water and ending it, but he pulls his cloak over his head, holds himself together in silence, and lets the wind have its way. And the wind carries them back, exactly to where they started, the island of Aeolus. Odysseus returns to the palace and begs for help a second time. But Aeolus now looks at him with horror. Leave my island immediately. No man as hated by the gods as you deserves my help. If they pursue you like this, I cannot shelter you. He turns him away with nothing, and now, without the bag and without the west wind, The fleet has no means of propulsion at all. The men have to move by muscle alone, hour after hour, across a flat sea where not a single breath of wind comes to help them. They row like that for 6 full days, pushing to the edge of exhaustion. On the 7th, a coast appears, a harbor with still water. It is a strange harbor. A wall of towering cliffs encloses it on almost every side, and it opens to the sea through only a single narrow entrance. Inside, the water lies flat as a lake, without a single wave. For men worn out from rowing against the open sea, it is the perfect refuge. And so, one after another, 11 ships cross the entrance and tie up inside, sheltered by the rock. But Odysseus does not enter. Something in that silence, too perfect, too still, troubles him. Instead of bringing his ship into the enclosed harbor, he leaves it outside, moored to a rock right at the mouth of the entrance, prow aimed at open water and ready to run. It is a decision that within hours will divide the living from the dead. He sends 3 men to find out who inhabits the land. Following a path, they come across a girl of enormous size drawing water from a spring. She is the daughter of the local king. Without any apparent menace, she points them on their way and leads them to her father's house. And there they discover the truth too late. The inhabitants of this land are not men. They are the Laestrygonians, giants who eat human flesh. Inside the house, the queen, huge as a mountain, looks at the newcomers and shouts for her husband. Antiphates, come see what luck has brought to our door. The giant king appears, seizes one of the 3 scouts without a word, and eats him on the spot. The other 2 run back toward the harbor, but it is already too late. Antiphates lets out a war cry, and his voice carries the length of the coast. Laestrygonians come from everywhere, not dozens, thousands, giants massing along the edge of the cliffs that ring the harbor, looking down at the ships sitting motionless in the still water below. And the perfect refuge reveals itself as the perfect trap. The 11 ships that sought shelter are now locked inside a stone well, with no room to turn, no wind to carry them out, and a single exit so narrow they cannot all pass through it at once. From above, the giants begin tearing loose rocks the size of men and dropping them down onto the ships. The sound fills the harbor, the cracking of hulls splitting apart, masts snapping like branches, the water swallowing one ship after another. The men who survived the first impacts jump in to swim, but there is nowhere to swim. Cliffs rise on every side. The Laestrygonians come down to the water's edge and spear them like fish caught in a net, dragging them out alive to devour. The narrow entrance that promised shelter has become the wall that traps them inside. From outside at the mouth of the harbor, Odysseus watches it all and can do nothing. 11 full crews die before his eyes in a matter of minutes, and he cannot send his one remaining ship into certain death to save them. Not a single vessel is left floating inside that harbor. Only his own ship survives, moored outside. Odysseus wastes no time. He draws his sword, cuts the mooring rope in a single stroke, and shouts the only order left. To the oars. Row for your lives, now. The men row with strength they did not know they still had, pulling away from the cliffs as rocks continue to crash into the water behind them. The ship wins the open sea and leaves the harbor behind, a harbor that has become a graveyard. When they are finally safe, they take stock, and it is the bitterest accounting of the entire voyage. Of the 12 ships that sailed together from Troy, 1 remains. Of all the men of Ithaca who crossed the sea to come home, only those rowing alongside Odysseus now are still alive. The curiosity of a few men opened Iolaus's bag and tore Ithaca from their grasp. Disobedience cost half the fleet at Ismarus, and now the caution of a single man, who anchored outside the harbor, is the only thing keeping them alive. They move on in silence, alive but broken by the loss of so many companions, and on the horizon another island appears. It is called Aiaia, and on it lives a woman who kills not with rocks or teeth, but with a power against which no sword is any use at all. The ship reaches the island of Aiaia with a single crew aboard, and the weight of 11 lost ones at its back. The men drag the vessel onto the sand and collapse there, and that is where they stay for 2 full days, without strength or will, crushed by the loss of so many companions. On the 3rd day, Odysseus takes his spear and sword and climbs to a high point to see where they have landed. From the height he makes out only one thing among the trees, a column of smoke rising from the center of the island. Someone lives there. On the way back, before speaking to his men, he kills a massive stag coming down to drink, hoists it onto his shoulders, and carries it to the camp. That night at least they eat well, but when he tells them about the smoke, the men break down. They remember the Cyclops, they remember the Laestrygonians, and they want nothing to do with any house on any island. Odysseus cannot go in blind, and he cannot send them all together. He divides the crew into 2 groups and draws lots to decide which will go and explore. The lot falls to Eurylochus, 22 men who set off toward the smoke while the rest stay with Odysseus by the ship. At the heart of the island, they find a house of polished stone in a forest clearing, and around it something stops them cold. Wolves and mountain lions move freely among the trees, but none of them attacks. Instead of lunging at the men, the animals approach wagging their tails, rise on their hind legs and press against them gently, like dogs expecting a caress from their master. No wild animal behaves like this. Those wolves and lions are men who entered that house before, men of whom nothing human remains on the outside. From inside comes a woman's voice, singing as she works at a great loom. It is Circe, daughter of the sun, sorceress. She comes to the door and with a smile invites the men inside. They all enter, hungry and trusting. All but one. Eurylochus stays outside, hidden, because something in that welcome that comes too easily tells him it is a trap. Circe seats the men and serves them a mixture of cheese, barley, and honey blended with wine, but she has stirred her drugs into the food, so they will forget completely their land and their home. When they finish eating, she touches each one with her wand. And the men change. Snouts push out through their faces, coarse bristles rise through their skin, their hands become hooves. Their whole bodies twist and bend them toward the ground. They try to speak, and only grunting comes out. But inside, nothing has changed. They still think like men, they still recognize each other, still fully aware of what they are and what they have lost, trapped inside animal bodies. Circe drives them into a sty, latches the gate and throws them acorns to eat like any other pig being fattened for slaughter. And they, on the inside, understand all of it. Eurylochus watches it all from his hiding place and runs back to the ship. He arrives so terrified he cannot speak at first. The words choke in his throat. When he finally manages to talk, he tells what he saw. The men went in and not one came back out. Odysseus does not hesitate. He takes his sword and his bow and goes alone toward the house, ready to rescue his men or die with them. Eurylochus grabs him and begs him not to go. Don't go. Please. If you walk in, you won't come back and you'll condemn the rest of us too. Let's flee while we still can." But Odysseus does not abandon his men. He goes alone, deeper into the forest, toward the house from which no one has returned, knowing he is walking into something he does not understand, and against which his sword may be useless. And on that path a young man steps in front of him. Not an ordinary man. It is Hermes, messenger of the gods, who has come down to help him. He knows Odysseus is walking straight to his destruction, because against Circe's magic, a sword is worthless. Hermes crouches down, pulls a plant from the ground, black root, white flower, an herb that mortals can barely tear free from the earth, and hands it to him. It is called moly, and it is the only shield against the sorceress's poisons. Then he gives him the plan, step by step. Keep this herb on you, and her drug will do nothing to you. Circe will give you drink, then strike you with her wand to transform you. When she does, draw your sword and go at her as if you mean to kill her. The fear will make her invite you to her bed. Do not refuse, she can free your men. But first, make her swear by the gods that she plots no further treachery against you. If you go to her without that oath, she will leave you helpless and finished." With that, Hermes vanishes, and Odysseus pockets the herb and continues toward the house with the plan fixed in his mind. Circe receives him exactly as she received the others, seats him, serves the drugged mixture, waits for him to eat. Odysseus eats and drinks without fear, protected by the moly. Then she touches him with the wand and speaks her spell. "Off to the sty now with your companions." But Odysseus does not change. No snout, no bristles, he stays a man. And in that instant he does exactly what Hermes told him. He draws his sword and throws himself at Circe as if to cut her throat. The sorceress cries out, drops to his feet, and clutches his knees, astonished that her drug has failed for the first time. She understands at once who he is. "No man has ever resisted my potion before. You must be Odysseus, the one Hermes told me would come. Put away your sword and come with me to my bed, so we may learn to trust each other." But Odysseus does not lower his guard. "How am I to trust you, you who just turned my men into pigs? I will not come near you until you swear by the gods that you are plotting no further harm against me." Circe swears the great oath of the gods. Only then does Odysseus agree to stay. But when her servants set out a feast, he does not touch the food. He sits in silence, grim-faced, and when Circe asks what is wrong, he gives her the only answer that matters. What man could eat in peace while his companions are still locked in a pigsty? If you truly want my trust, free them. Circe goes to the sty with her wand, rubs each pig with a different ointment, and undoes the spell. The bristles fall away, the bodies straighten, and the men become men again. More than that, they emerge younger and stronger than before. When they find themselves free, they weep and embrace each other, and even Circe herself is moved by it. Convinced at last, Odysseus goes back to the ship to bring the rest of the crew. They all follow willingly, relieved to find the companions they had given up for lost. All except Eurylochus, who plants his feet and accuses them of walking like sheep to their deaths. "Where are you going, fools? To the sorceress's house so she can turn us all into pigs or wolves? Have you already forgotten the Cyclops, when this man's recklessness cost so many lives?" Odysseus, furious, puts his hand on his sword and for a moment considers cutting off his head on the spot, kinsman or not. The others hold him back. In the end, Eurylochus follows too afraid to stay alone on a deserted shore. And so the island that was going to be their grave becomes their rest. Circe takes them all in. They eat meat in abundance, drink sweet wine, and recover day by day the strength the sea had stripped from them. The weeks pass without anyone keeping count, and the weeks become months, and the months become a full year. For the first time since they left Troy, the men are safe, well-fed, and at peace. So much at peace that the memory of Ithaca begins to fade, not through magic this time, but through plain comfort. It is his own men who wake him. After a year has passed, they come to Odysseus and remind him of the only thing that truly matters. If the gods mean for us to survive, it is time. Remember your homeland. Remember Ithaca. That night, Odysseus asks Circe to honor her promise and let them leave. She agrees, but warns him that he cannot reach home by the direct route. First, he must make a journey no living man has ever made. You are not going to Ithaca yet? First, you must go down to the house of Hades, to the kingdom of the dead. There you must consult the soul of the prophet Tiresias. He alone, even in death, can tell you how to reach home. The words fall like stone. To descend to the world of the dead and return is something no one has managed. Odysseus gathers his men to give them the news, and they, who believed they were already on the road home, collapse when they learn the destination is the kingdom of death. In the rush to depart, a quiet tragedy goes unnoticed. Elphenor, the youngest of the crew, has been sleeping drunk on the roof of Circe's house. When he hears the noise of the departure, he gets up in a daze, forgets he is at a height, and instead of going down the stairs, steps off the edge. He falls headfirst to the ground, breaks his neck, and dies instantly. In the commotion, no one notices. The ship sails from Aya with everyone on board but one, headed for a place from which no one is supposed to return. Odysseus, the man who broke Troy with cunning and blinded the Cyclops with a stake, goes now to face something against which neither cunning nor weapons are of any use: death itself. No living man has ever made the journey Odysseus is about to make. Following Circe's instructions, the ship sails to the edge of the world, to the boundary where the ocean ends and the land of the dead begins. A shore wrapped in a fog the sun never pierces, not at dawn, not at dusk, where an eternal night holds sway. The men row in silence because they know they are crossing a boundary no one crosses twice. There on the shore, Odysseus performs the rite Circe taught him. He digs a pit in the earth and pours the offerings for the dead around it. Milk mixed with honey, sweet wine, water, and over it all he scatters white barley flour. Then he cuts the throats of a black ram and a black ewe over the pit, and lets the dark blood pool inside. And the blood calls them. From the depths, from the very bottom of the darkness, the souls of the dead begin rising in a multitude. Girls who died young, old men bent by years, soldiers fallen in battle with their wounds still open and their weapons still stained. All of them swarming around the pit with a clamor of voices no living person should ever hear. They come for the blood, drawn to it like iron to a magnet, pressing against each other to arrive first. Odysseus feels the fear climb his back and close around his throat, but he remembers Circe's command. No soul may drink the blood before Tiresias. He draws his sword and holds it edge forward, keeping the crowd of spirits at bay. The first to approach is not a hero. It is Elphenor, the young man who died falling from Circe's roof, still unburied. His soul drifts without rest because his body was left behind. He speaks to Odysseus with a desperate plea. Do not go on your way and leave me unmourned and unburied. I don't want your forgetting to draw the anger of the gods down on you. Go back to Circe's island, burn my body with my weapons, and raise a mound over the shore so I will not be forgotten." Odysseus, shaken, promises to honor his wish. Then something he did not expect happens. Among the souls he recognizes a face, his own mother, Anticlea, who was alive when he left for the war. Seeing her among the dead destroys him, because it means she has died without his knowing. He wants to hold her, to speak to her, but he forces himself to hold back. Not even she can drink the blood until Tiresias has spoken. So he lets her weep at the edge of the pit and holds his ground, sword in hand, with a broken heart. At last Tiresias arrives, the blind prophet of Thebes, the only soul among the dead who has kept his wisdom intact. He drinks the dark blood from the pit and, with his voice restored, reveals Odysseus's fate. "You seek a sweet homecoming, Odysseus, but a god will make it bitter. Poseidon does not forgive you for blinding his son, and through the sea he will pursue you. Even so, you can reach home if you can master yourself and master your men. You will come to the island of Thrinacia, where the sacred cattle of the sun graze. If you leave them untouched, you will suffer, but you will return. But if you touch them, I tell you now, your ship will be destroyed and your men will die. And you will arrive late and alone on a stranger's ship to find your house full of men consuming your wealth and courting your wife. Those men you will have to kill by cunning or head-on. And even after that you must undertake another journey. Walk inland with an oar on your shoulder until you reach a people who have never seen the sea, so ignorant of it that they will mistake your oar for a winnowing fan. There plant the oar in the ground and offer sacrifices to Poseidon to make your peace with him. If you do all of this, death will come for you far from the sea, gentle in a peaceful old age, among a happy people. That is your fate." When Tiresias finishes and steps away, Odysseus finally lets his mother approach and drink the blood. Only then does she recognize him and speak. He asks her about everything he left behind. And Anticlea's answer is the true weight of this journey. "Your wife Penelope is still in your palace, faithful, weeping for you night and day. Your son Telemachus is a man now and tends to your lands. Your father Laertes lives in the countryside, old and consumed by grief, sleeping in the ashes in winter and on dry leaves outside, waiting for your return. And you, mother, what killed you? No illness, my son. It was your absence, the longing for you, for your tenderness. That is what took my life." 3 times Odysseus, overcome, opens his arms and throws himself forward to embrace her. And 3 times his mother's form slips through his arms like a shadow, like a dream that dissolves at waking, and he is left clutching nothing but cold air. There is no way to touch the dead, and that may be the deepest wound of the entire journey. To have his mother before him, to hear her, to see her, and not be able to hold her even once. When his mother fades back, the souls of great women of the past parade before Odysseus, queens and mothers of heroes drawn too by the blood. One after another they approach to tell him who they were in life, as if wanting the world of the living not to forget them entirely. But soon they are replaced by a different kind of dead. The souls of the heroes he fought alongside at Troy come near. The first is Agamemnon, the great king who commanded all the Greeks. But he did not die in the war. He died in his own house, murdered on the day of his homecoming by his wife and her lover, cut down during a banquet like an ox in a stall. His warning is direct. Do not trust completely, not even your wife. Do not reveal everything you know. I came home expecting love and found treachery and an axe. Approach your land carefully in secret. Then Achilles appears, the greatest warrior of them all. Odysseus tries to console him by saying that even in death he reigns powerfully among the dead. But Achilles rejects the comfort with one of the bitterest truths in the entire poem. Don't speak kindly to me about death, Odysseus. I would rather be a common laborer, working for a poor man with no land of his own, than reign over all the dead down here. After that, he asks only about his son. When Odysseus tells him his son has become a warrior of great glory, the soul of Achilles strides away across the meadow of the dead, swelling with pride. There is, however, one soul that does not come forward to drink or to speak. It is Ajax, the second greatest warrior of the Greeks after Achilles, who in life had taken his own life, humiliated after losing to Odysseus in the dispute over Achilles' armor. Odysseus speaks to him, begs him to forget the bitterness, to answer. But Ajax, in silence, turns his back and sinks into the darkness without a single word. That silence weighs more than any reproach. Beyond, Odysseus catches sight of the eternal punishments of the underworld. He sees Tantalus, submerged in a lake up to his neck, consumed by thirst. Every time he bends down to drink, the water vanishes, and the fruit hanging above his head rises out of reach when he stretches toward it. And he sees Sisyphus, condemned to push an enormous boulder uphill. Just as he nears the summit, the stone slips from him and rolls back to the bottom, and he begins again and again, forever. But the souls keep coming, more and more of them, a tide of the dead crying out around the pit. A new terror seizes Odysseus, the fear that the queen of the dead, Persephone, will send something worse up from the depths. He has heard what he came to hear. He runs back to the ship, orders the lines cast off and the vessel pushed into the sea at once. The oarsmen obey, and the current of the ocean carries them away from that fog-bound shore, back toward the world of the living. Odysseus takes with him the only thing he went there to find, the road home. But he also carries a warning that sits in him like a stone. Somewhere ahead on the sea there is an island with cattle he must not touch. What his men do on that island will decide whether all of them return to Ithaca or none of them do. Before going further, Odysseus has a promise to keep with the dead. The ship returns to Circe's island, and there the men carry out Elpenor's last wish. They burn his body, raise a mound on the shore, and plant his oar at the top, so his grave will be visible from the sea. Only then can the young man's soul find rest. Circe welcomes them back, feeds them, and before letting them leave gives Odysseus the most valuable thing she can offer: exact knowledge of the dangers still to come. She takes him aside and, one by one, explains how to survive each one. Without these warnings, no man would cross those waters alive. First you will come to the Sirens, she tells him. They sing in a way no man can resist. Whoever hears their voice forgets his home, his course, everything, and steers the ship toward them. But around their meadow lie the bones of the men who fell for it, rotting in the sun. To get past them, seal your men's ears with wax so they hear nothing. You, if you want to hear them, may. But have them tie you hand and foot to the mast, and tell them that no matter how much you beg or struggle, they must not free you. They must bind you tighter still. Then she warns him that past the Sirens, the route splits in two, and both are deadly. On one side are the wandering rocks, cliffs that move and crash against each other, crushing everything that tries to pass. Not even birds make it through. The surf and the fire tear apart any ship. Only one vessel ever crossed those rocks with the help of the gods. That path is not for you. The other is a strait between two cliffs, and on each one a monster waits. On the higher cliff lives Scylla. She has 6 long necks and 6 heads, and in each mouth 3 rows of teeth packed tight. From her cave, she snatches 6 men from every ship that passes, 1 for each head, and carries them off. She is not mortal, Odysseus. You cannot kill her. If you stop to fight her, all you will accomplish is losing 6 more men. Across from her, beneath the other cliff, is Charybdis. 3 times a day, she swallows the entire sea in a whirlpool and vomits it back out. If your ship gets caught there, no one survives. And here is the choice. Hug the side of Scylla and row with everything you have. You will lose 6 men, yes, but losing 6 is better than losing all of them in Charybdis. Do not stop for anything. Finally, Circe repeats the warning Tiresias already gave him among the dead. Farther on lies the island of the sun, with its sacred cattle, and if they touch it, they are lost. With that map of horrors burned into his mind, Odysseus sets sail. Soon the wind drops and the sea goes completely still, without a single wave, as though an invisible hand has calmed it, so the song will carry farther. It is the sign. Odysseus cuts a large block of wax, breaks it into pieces, and softens them in his hands until they give, then seals the ears of each of his men one by one, making sure none of them can hear anything. Then he has himself bound to the mast, hand and foot, and repeats the order on which his life now depends. That no matter what, they must not free him. If he struggles or begs, they are to tie him tighter still. The ship moves across the still water and the song begins. The Sirens call him by name. Come, famous Odysseus, glory of the Greeks. Stop your ship and listen to us. No one has passed this way without hearing our voice, and all have left wiser for it. We know everything you suffered at Troy. We know everything that happens upon the earth. Come. The song enters Odysseus like a fire burning him from within. It is the most beautiful voice he has ever heard, and it promises him exactly what he wants most: to know everything, to suffer no more, to stay. With his whole soul, he wants to go to them. He strains against the ropes, shouts, makes furious signs to his men to untie him, twists against the cords until his wrists bleed. But the men, ears sealed with wax, hear neither the Sirens nor their king. For them there is only silence and the oar. Seeing their captain begging to be freed, 2 of them rise and do exactly the opposite, just as he ordered. They pull the ropes even tighter. They row without rest until the song shrinks to a distant thread and finally fades out. Only then do they pull the wax from their ears and untie Odysseus, who collapses to the deck exhausted, alive because of his own orders. But the relief does not last. Ahead, the sea narrows between 2 walls of rock, and from far off the air begins to fill with a low, swelling roar. Above the water, at the foot of one of the cliffs, a cloud of foam and spray rises. It is Charybdis, swallowing the sea with a sound heard long before she is seen. The men, terrified by a noise that sounds like the earth itself tearing open, drop their oars, and the ship goes dead in the water, drifting straight toward the danger. Odysseus moves down the deck, encouraging them one by one. He says nothing about Scylla. If they knew what was waiting, they would hide below deck and stop rowing, and then all of them would die. This is not the first time we've stared death in the face. We survived the Cyclops in his own cave, and we will get through this too. Hold the oars and row with everything you have. Trust me and obey. The men take up the oars again. Odysseus makes his choice. He steers the ship towards Scylla's side, away from the whirlpool that swallows whole ships. And he does the one thing Circe forbade him to do. He puts on his armor, takes up 2 spears, and plants himself at the bow, watching the cliff, unable to leave his men without fighting for them. Every eye is fixed on Charybdis, off to the left. When the monster swallows, the sea collapses into a giant funnel that spins on itself and lays bare the black sand of the sea floor while the water roars like a wounded beast. When she vomits it back out, the whole strait boils with foam and the rocks around it run wet. It is a sight that freezes everyone with horror, and because of it, no one aboard sees the strike coming from the other side. Because while everyone watches Charybdis, Scylla attacks from the cliff on the right. Her 6 necks shoot out at once over the rail, and in a single motion the 6 heads close on the deck and tear 6 men from the ship, 1 for each mouth. Odysseus watches them rise into the air, thrashing uselessly against the jaws, kicking at empty space, calling his name and reaching their hands toward him in their final instant. They are the strongest and most loyal men he has left. And he can do nothing. The spears are useless against an immortal monster hanging from a cliff face, and the ship cannot stop. To slow down is to lose everyone. The 6 vanish into the mouth of Scylla's cave, devoured while still calling out to their king, their voices going out one by one. Odysseus will say later that this is the cruelest image of his entire voyage. Watching his men die that way, knowing it was he who had led them there, and that there had been no way to save them. The ship clears the strait and leaves the 2 monsters behind. They have paid the price Circe foretold. 6 men in exchange for the whole ship. The decision was the right one, and still it sits like a stone. Exhausted and silent, the survivors sail on until a new island appears, green and calm, with great herds grazing across its meadows. On any other day it would feel like relief, but Odysseus knows what this place is. It is Thrinacia, the island of the sun, and the cattle grazing peacefully before them are exactly what neither Tiresias nor Circe allowed them to touch. The most dangerous island of the entire voyage is also the one that looks most harmless. Thrinacia stretches out green and quiet before the ship. No monsters in sight, no threatening cliffs. There are only meadows, and in the meadows great herds grazing in peace. But that cattle belongs to Helios, the sun god, who sees everything from the sky. There are 7 herds of cattle and 7 of sheep, 50 in each, sacred animals that neither are born nor die, guarded by the daughters of the sun. And both Tiresias among the dead and Circe on her island warned the same thing. If they touch the herds, they are lost. That is why Odysseus gives an order his men find cruel. We do not go ashore. We pass this island and keep rowing. But the men are at their limit. They have gone days without sleep. They have just watched 6 companions devoured by Scylla, and night is closing in. Eurylochus, once again, raises his voice against his king, and this time the whole crew backs him. You're made of iron, Odysseus. You never tire, and you think we don't either. We're exhausted, and you're asking us to keep rowing through the night, blind? when a sudden gust in the dark could wreck us against any rock. Let us go ashore, rest, and eat beside the ship. At dawn we'll set sail." Odysseus is alone against all of them, and he knows it. He gives in, but not without protecting himself. Before they touch land, he makes every man swear a solemn oath. They will not touch a single cow or a single sheep belonging to the sun, however hungry they may be. They will eat only the provisions Circe gave them. The men swear. They go ashore, dine on their own stores, mourn the companions lost in the strait, and fall asleep on the shore. That night, the gods set their trap. A south wind rises that does not let up, and the next morning it is still blowing, and the day after that too. The sea becomes impassable. Day after day, the contrary wind pins them to the island, unable to set sail. Not 2 days pass, nor 3. A full month passes. While there is still food and wine from the ship, the men keep the oath. But provisions meant to last a few days cannot last a month, and one day they simply run out. Then real hunger begins. Reduced to fending for themselves, they roam the island hunting birds and climb down to the rocks to fish with curved hooks for whatever the sea will give them. It is almost never enough. And while their stomachs twist with hunger, right there, just a few steps away, graze the fat and peaceful cattle of the sun, hundreds of forbidden animals, salvation and condemnation at once, watching them go hungry day after day. One day, desperate, Odysseus goes inland to pray to the gods and beg them for a way home. But the gods, who have already decided the ending, send a deep sleep over him. And while their king sleeps far off, Eurylochus gathers the starving men and says aloud what everyone is thinking. "Listen to me. Every kind of death is hateful, but the worst of all is dying of hunger. There stand the cattle of the sun. Let us sacrifice them to the gods properly. If we reach Ithaca, we will build Helios a magnificent temple to make up for it. And if he decides to sink us for this, I would rather die in one swallow at sea than waste away slowly, day after day on this cursed island." The men, beaten by hunger, agree with him. They gather the best cattle from the sacred herd, slaughter them, and lacking barley and wine for the proper rite, scatter oak leaves and pour out water instead. They light the fire and put the meat to roast. The smell of the roasting meat wakes Odysseus. The moment he smells it, he understands what has happened, and his heart turns to ice. He runs back toward the shore, crying out to the gods, but it is already too late. The damage is done, and there is no way to give back life to the cattle of the sun. This time it was not his own recklessness that condemned them. He had warned them, made them swear, done everything a captain could do, and still he is going to lose them all. Then the gods send their signs, and they are signs that would chill anyone. The hides stripped from the cattle begin to crawl on the ground by themselves, as if still alive. And the meat, skewered on the spits and over the coals, bellows. It bellows the way cattle bellow in the meadow, pierced now by fire. It is an omen that announces death with total clarity. And even so, hunger overpowers dread. For 6 days the men feast on the sun's forbidden cattle, unable to stop themselves. Above in the sky, Helios sees it all, and his fury is terrible. He goes before Zeus and demands punishment. "If you do not avenge me on the men who killed my cattle, I will go down to the kingdom of the dead and shine only for them. I will never light the world of the living again." Zeus promises him it will not go unpunished. He will sink Odysseus's ship with his own thunderbolt the moment it puts out to sea. On the seventh day, the contrary wind finally dies down. The men, unaware of the sentence hanging over them, launch the ship and pull away from Thrinacia, relieved to leave the island behind. But the relief is the final trap. The moment they lose sight of land and find themselves surrounded only by sea and sky, Zeus keeps his word. A black cloud closes suddenly over the ship, and day turns to night. The sea rises, the wind tears the mast clean out, and then the bolt strikes, straight down on the ship. The impact shatters it to pieces and fills the air with smoke and the smell of sulfur. The men are thrown overboard and left floating around the wreckage like gulls over the waves, thrashing in the black water. One by one, the waves close over them and swallow them. None comes back up to the surface. So dies the last of Odysseus's companions, exactly as Tiresias and Circe had foretold. The prophecy is fulfilled to the letter. The cattle were touched, and the ship and the entire crew have vanished. Of the more than 600 men who set sail from Troy in 12 ships, not one remains. Only Odysseus is left, alive in the middle of the sea, with no ship, no men, and nothing at all. But surviving will not be easy. Among the wreckage, Odysseus lashes together the mast and the keel of the shattered ship with a strap, clings to them and lets the current carry him. And the current, to make things worse, drags him back toward the Strait of the Monsters, straight toward Charybdis. He arrives just as the whirlpool sucks the sea downward and his timbers vanish, pulled into the abyss. Had he stayed on them, he would have died. But at the last instant, Odysseus leaps upward and grabs hold of a fig tree growing from the rock above the whirlpool. There he hangs, clinging like a bat to the stone wall, unable to climb up or down, waiting. He waits and waits until at last Charybdis vomits back the timbers she had swallowed. The moment he sees them appear, he drops down onto them, mounts them again, and rows himself away with his hands, leaving the whirlpool behind. For 9 days he floats adrift, alone, with no course, carried by the waves. On the 10th, the gods push him toward a distant island, covered in forests, where a goddess with beautiful hair lives. The island is called Ogygia, and the goddess Calypso. Odysseus does not know it yet, but he has just arrived at the place where time will stop for him for 7 long years. There is exactly one place in the entire voyage where Odysseus is offered an end to all suffering forever. And it is, precisely, the place he most desperately wants to escape. After 9 days clinging to a few timbers, Odysseus arrives half dead on the island of Ogygia. There, Calypso finds him, a goddess with beautiful hair, daughter of the Titan Atlas, who lives alone on an island covered in forests, springs, and flowering meadows. She takes him in, heals him, brings him back to life. It is a place so beautiful that even a god would stop to admire it. And Calypso wants Odysseus to stay forever. She wants him as a husband, and she offers him something no mortal ever receives: immortality and eternal youth. If he accepts, he will never age again, never suffer again, never die. He need give up only one thing: Ithaca. But Odysseus does not accept. The months pass, and the months become years, and the years add up to 7. 7 years trapped in paradise. By night he sleeps beside the goddess, in her cave, because he cannot refuse an immortal, but without desire now, compelled rather than in love. And by day he always does the same thing: He goes down to the rocks on the shore, sits facing the sea, and weeps. He spends hours staring at the empty horizon toward the direction where his home lies, consumed by longing for his wife, his son, his land. And there is the paradox that tears at him. Immortality stands before him, eternal youth, an island free of pain or old age or death, everything any man would dream of. And none of it is worth to him as much as a wisp of smoke rising over the rooftops of Ithaca. He would rather see his homeland once and die than live forever young in a place that is not his, beside a woman who is not his. Eternity without home is not a prize. It is a prison. Far from there, on Mount Olympus, his luck finally turns. Athena, the goddess who has always watched over him, takes advantage of Poseidon's absence and brings the case of Odysseus before Zeus. She asks why the most just and most patient of men remains abandoned to his suffering while no one lifts a finger for him. Zeus agrees. The time has come. He calls Hermes, his messenger, and gives him an order for Calypso. Hermes flies down to Ogygia, crosses the sea, and stands before the goddess with the command of the king of the gods. Zeus orders that you release Odysseus. It is not his fate to die far from his own on a forgotten island. It is written that he return to his land, that he see his family and his home again. Let him go. Calypso listens and is filled with bitterness. She reproaches the gods for their jealousy, that it troubles them when a goddess keeps a mortal man for herself. She reminds Hermes that it was she who saved Odysseus when he arrived alone and shipwrecked, clinging to the keel of his shattered ship. But before an order from Zeus, not even a goddess can refuse. She goes down to the shore, where Odysseus weeps as he does every day, and gives him the news he has waited 7 years to hear. Weep no more for me. You are free to go. I will help you build a raft and load it with provisions so you may reach your homeland. But Odysseus, who has been deceived too many times, does not trust even a gift like this. He suspects some new trap, and before agreeing, he demands of the goddess the same thing he once demanded of Circe. You are plotting something, goddess, if you suddenly let me go. I will not board any raft until you swear by the gods that you are preparing no new harm against me. Calypso smiles at such distrust and swears the solemn oath he asks for. That night, for the last time, she tempts him once more. She warns him of all he will still suffer at sea before reaching home, and reminds him that she is an immortal goddess, more beautiful than any mortal woman, more beautiful than Penelope herself, who will age and die. Odysseus answers her with respect, but without yielding a single step. Goddess, do not be offended. I know well that Penelope is mortal, and that beside you she seems a small thing, and that you never age or die. And still, every day I long to return home. If a god sinks me into the sea again, I will bear it, as I have already borne so much. But I will not stop trying to return. And so, the man who could have been immortal chooses mortality, suffering, and the road home. The next morning, Calypso gives him tools and leads him to a far edge of the island, to a grove of tall trees already dried out, the best for floating. Odysseus works like the expert he is. He fells 20 trunks with the axe, planes them smooth, trims them to a single length, and joins them with pegs and ropes, fitting each piece together as a good ship's carpenter would. He reinforces the sides so the waves cannot tear it apart, raises a mast with its crossbeam, ties on the sail the goddess has woven for him, and mounts a large oar at the stern to steer the course. In 4 days, the raft is finished. On the 5th, Calypso bathes him, dresses him in clean, perfumed clothing, provides him with a skin of wine, another of water and a sack of food, and sends a gentle, steady wind in his favor. Odysseus sets sail alone at last, bound for home. He sails 17 days guided by the sky without sleep, watching the stars exactly as the goddess instructed, keeping the bear always on his left hand, never taking his eyes from the heavens. On the 18th day, the shadowy mountains of a distant land appear on the horizon, the coast of the Phaeacians. Salvation is in sight. But just then, Poseidon returns from his travels and, from far off, sees Odysseus on the verge of escaping. He understands that the other gods have freed him behind his back and falls into rage. If he cannot prevent his return, he will at least make him pay for this last stretch. He gathers the clouds, stirs the sea with his trident, and unleashes every wind at once. Day turns to night. A mountainous wave crashes over the raft, spins it around, and throws Odysseus overboard. The weight of the clothing Calypso gave him drags him down, and only with great effort does he reach the surface again and climb back onto the timbers, spitting seawater. In the midst of the disaster, a sea goddess takes pity on him. Ino, also called Leucothea, rises from the waves in the form of a bird and speaks to him. Poseidon will not rest until he has made you suffer, but he will not manage to kill you. Take off that clothing that is dragging you down, abandon the raft and swim for the shore. Take this immortal veil, tie it around your chest, and do not fear drowning. When you touch dry land, return it to the sea without looking back. She gives him the veil and disappears beneath the water. At that moment, a giant wave from Poseidon smashes the raft completely apart and scatters the logs like straw. Odysseus clings to a single one, tears off the goddess's heavy clothing, ties Ino's veil around his chest, and throws himself into the open sea to swim. Satisfied that he has been punished, Poseidon withdraws, and Athena then calms nearly all the winds, leaving only one to push him toward the shore. Odysseus swims 2 full days and nights without rest, never knowing if the next wave will be his last. On the 3rd, the sea grows calm, and he sees land nearby. But his hope lasts only a moment. The entire coast is a wall of cliffs and sharp rocks against which the surf breaks in fury. There is no beach, no harbor to reach. A wave hurls him against the rocks, and he survives only by gripping one of them, while the undertow tears the skin from his hands as it pulls him back. When all seems lost, Athena puts an idea in his mind. Instead of fighting the cliffs, swim parallel to the coast until he finds another way in. And he finds one. He reaches the mouth of a river with calm waters and prays to the god of that river, who takes pity on him, stills the current, and opens the way. Odysseus finally enters calm water and drags himself onto the shore, alive by a miracle. There, with no strength left, he falls to his knees and kisses the ground beneath him. He carries out Ino's last instruction and casts the veil back into the river without turning to look. Then, naked, freezing, his body battered by the sea, he crawls to a thicket of olive trees beside the water, covers himself with a heap of dry leaves to keep from dying of cold. And Athena sends him a deep, restoring sleep. For the first time in 7 years, Odysseus sleeps far from Calypso. He is alive, he is free, and he has touched land. But he has nothing. No ship, no men, no clothing, not the slightest idea what land he has washed up on or who lives there. While he sleeps among the leaves, not far away, in the city on that same coast, a young princess is about to change everything. For the first time in a long while, what wakes Odysseus is not a war cry or the roar of a monster, but the laughter of young women playing. The land he has reached is Scheria, the country of the Phaeacians, a people of great seafarers. And while Odysseus sleeps among the leaves, the goddess Athena has set a plan in motion. She appears in a dream to Nausicaa, the young daughter of King Alcinous, and plants in her the idea of going to the river to wash the household linens. The next morning, the princess asks her father for a wagon and goes down with her handmaids to the mouth of the river, right where the shipwrecked man lies hidden. The girls wash the clothes, bathe, eat, and start playing with a ball. In a careless moment, the ball falls into the river, and they all burst into shouts and laughter. That noise wakes Odysseus. He comes out from the thicket, and the sight is that of a wild creature, naked, crusted with sea salt, his body battered by the rocks and the days at sea. He covers himself only with a leafy branch. At the sight of him, the handmaids flee in terror in every direction. Only one does not move. Nausicaa, into whom Athena has put courage, stands firm before the stranger. And here Odysseus does what he does best. He uses words. He knows a naked man cannot approach to clasp a young woman's knees without frightening her further. So he keeps his distance and speaks to her with respect and gentleness. I do not know if you are a goddess or a mortal woman. If you are mortal, blessed are your parents, and blessed the man who someday takes you home as his wife. I have never seen such beauty. Have pity on me. I come from long suffering at sea, and I know no one in this land. I ask only for a cloth to cover myself and the way to the city. The words move Nausicaa. She calls back her frightened handmaids, scolds them for fleeing from a poor shipwrecked man, and orders them to give him food, oil to anoint himself, and clean clothing. Odysseus bathes in the river, washes off years of sea salt, and dresses. And then Athena transforms him. She makes him appear taller, stronger, with his hair falling in curls. When Nausicaa sees him like this, she is smitten, and thinks that she wishes a man like that might someday be her husband. But the princess is prudent, and before bringing him to the city, she gives him precise instructions. Do not enter the city with me. If people see us together, they will talk and say, I have found myself a foreign husband. Follow the wagon at a distance, and when you reach the palace, do not stop before my father the king. Go straight to my mother, Queen Arete, clasp her knees and beg her. If she looks on you with favor, your return home is secured. Odysseus obeys. To protect him, Athena wraps him in a mist that makes him invisible, so that no Phaeacian stops him or questions him along the way. So he crosses the city and reaches the palace of Alcinous, a marvel unlike anything he has seen in the whole voyage. Walls of bronze, doors of gold, gardens where the trees bear fruit all year round, pear trees, pomegranates, and vines that never stop producing. After so many islands of monsters, at last a civilized and prosperous place. Inside, the mist dissolves at once. Before the assembled court, Odysseus crosses the hall, throws himself at the feet of Queen Arete, and clasps her knees, exactly as Nausicaa instructed. He begs them to help him return home. The Phaeacians are astonished at the stranger who has appeared from nowhere. But King Alcinous lifts him from the floor, seats him beside himself with honor, and promises him, without even knowing who he is, that his people will carry him home on their ships, wherever that may be. Then he orders a banquet in his honor. To entertain their guest, the Phaeacians organize games, races, wrestling, jumping, and throwing. When they invite Odysseus to compete, he declines politely, exhausted by all he has been through. But a young man named Euryalus taunts him in front of everyone, saying he does not look like an athlete but like a greedy merchant who thinks only of loading his ship with profit. The insult lights a fire in Odysseus. Without wasting words, he takes the largest and heaviest discus there, far bigger than the ones the Phaeacians use, and throws it. The discus flies whistling far beyond every mark and lands much farther than anyone has reached. He then challenges any of them to beat him at whatever they choose, and the whole hall falls silent. The supposed merchant turns out to be something else entirely. During the feast, Demodocus, the blind bard of the court, sings, and as chance would have it, he sings precisely about the Trojan War, the deeds of the Greek heroes, their disputes, and later the trick of the wooden horse. Odysseus, hearing his own story told by a stranger who does not recognize him, cannot hold himself together. He covers his head with his cloak so no one will see him and weeps in silence. But Alcinous, seated beside him, notices the tears and finally asks him what no one had asked before. "Who are you, stranger? Why do you weep on hearing the fate of the Greeks at Troy? Did you lose someone of your own there?" The moment has come. Odysseus stops hiding and reveals before the entire court the name that has weighed on him for years. "I am Odysseus, son of Laertes, known among men for my cunning, and my homeland is Ithaca." The hall falls silent. They have before them one of the great heroes of the Trojan War. And at the king's request, Odysseus then tells them everything he has lived through since the fall of the city. The Cicones, the Lotus Eaters, the Cyclops, Aeolus, the Laestrygonians, Circe, the realm of the dead, the Sirens, Scylla and Charybdis, the cattle of the sun, and the 7 years with Calypso. The whole voyage told from his own mouth. The Phaeacians listen, awestruck. When Odysseus finishes, there is no longer any doubt about what they must do. Alcinous and the nobles shower him with gifts, gold, bronze, fine cloth, and treasures. More wealth than he would have brought home from Troy if nothing had gone wrong. And they keep their promise. They prepare one of their marvelous ships, capable of sailing guided by thought alone, with no helmsman and no effort. And they put Odysseus aboard with all his treasure. The moment they set sail, a sweet and deep sleep, like death itself, overtakes Odysseus. He sleeps while the Phaeacian ship cuts through the sea at a speed no bird could match. And so, asleep without knowing it, Odysseus finally crosses the last stretch of water separating him from home. The ship arrives at night at a cove in Ithaca. The Phaeacians carefully carry Odysseus ashore, still asleep, and unload all his gifts beside him. Then they put back out to sea, heading home. But Poseidon does not forgive them for having helped him. The moment the ship nears its own harbor, the god turns it to stone with a single blow, in full sight of all the Phaeacians, as punishment for having carried home the man he wanted, lost forever. When Odysseus wakes, he is lying on a beach, surrounded by gold and treasure, in a land that Athena's mist keeps him from recognizing. He looks around without understanding where he is, and for a moment, believing himself abandoned on yet another strange shore, he falls into despair once more, as he has so many times before. He does not know he has already arrived. He does not know that these unfamiliar hills are the hills of his childhood, and that this ground beneath his feet, after 20 years of war and sea, after losing his 12 ships, all his men, and nearly his own life, is at last Ithaca. The voyage across the sea has ended, but the hardest battle of all still awaits him, and this one he will fight not against monsters or gods, but inside his own home, a palace overrun by men devouring his wealth, courting his wife, and waiting for his death. Odysseus has returned, and no one in Ithaca knows it yet. Odysseus is home for the first time in 20 years, and he does not know it. He wakes on a beach surrounded by the treasures the Phaeacians gave him, but the mist Athena has spread over the island changes the look of everything: the roads, the harbor, the familiar hills of his childhood. Believing himself abandoned once again on a strange shore, he falls into despair, checks his riches fearing the Phaeacians have tricked and robbed him, and curses his luck. Then a young shepherd approaches him, and Odysseus, true to his habit of trusting no one, immediately invents a false story about who he is and where he comes from. But the shepherd is Athena in disguise, and his cunning, far from annoying her, delights her. She recognizes in him the most resourceful of mortals, just as she is the most cunning of the gods. She reveals herself as she truly is, and tells him the truth that changes everything. You are in Ithaca, Odysseus. You have come home. But the joy lasts only a moment, because Athena explains the state in which he will find his home. For 3 years, dozens of nobles from Ithaca and the neighboring islands have occupied his palace. They court Penelope, his wife, having given him up for dead. And meanwhile they eat through his herds, empty his storerooms, and consume his wealth day after day, waiting for the queen to finally choose one of them. If Odysseus presents himself openly, they will kill him all at once before he can do anything. So the goddess lays out a plan. Together they hide the Phaeacian treasure in a cave. Then Athena transforms Odysseus so that no one can recognize him. She wrinkles his skin, withers his body, dims the brightness of his eyes, strips away his hair, and dresses him in filthy rags. The king of Ithaca becomes a wretched old beggar. Disguised this way, unrecognizable, he can enter his own land and find out who is loyal to him and who is not. Athena sends him first to a safe place, the hut of Eumaeus, the swineherd, the most loyal of all the servants who ever served him, who tends the pigs in the hills far from the palace. Eumaeus does not recognize his king beneath the beggar's rags, but he receives the poor old man with exemplary hospitality, exactly the kind the suitors have forgotten. He invites him in, feeds him, wraps him in his own cloak against the cold of the night, slaughters one of the pigs to honor his guest, and shares with him the little he has. And as they eat, he laments with grief the men who shamelessly devour his absent master's estate. My lord lies dead somewhere in the world, or lost at the bottom of the sea, says Eumaeus, and these men divide up his house like vultures, slaughter his finest animals, and drink his wine as if it were their own. I still weep for the master who left and who will never come back. Odysseus listens and tests him. He tells him a false story, that he is a traveler from Crete fallen on hard times, and assures him he has heard reliable news that Odysseus is alive and about to return. But Eumaeus, worn down by years of broken hope, does not dare believe him. Too many wanderers have promised the same thing in exchange for a plate of food. Meanwhile, another journey is about to end. Telemachus, Odysseus' son, who was a baby when his father left for war and is now a young man, has traveled to distant lands seeking news of him. The suitors, fearing he might return and stand in their way, have prepared an ambush to kill him at sea on his way back. But Athena warns him in time, has him avoid the trap, and guides him so that on landing he does not go straight to the palace but first to Eumaeus' hut. Telemachus arrives at the hut, and Eumaeus receives him with tears of joy, like a father getting back a son. The young man, not knowing who the beggar sitting by the fire is, treats him with respect. He then sends Eumaeus to the palace to tell Penelope in secret that her son has returned safely. And once father and son are alone, the moment comes. Athena, from outside, restores Odysseus to his true form. She makes him tall, strong, and dignified once more. Telemachus, seeing the old beggar transformed into an imposing man, steps back in fear, believing he is looking at a god. "I am no god. I am your father, Odysseus, for whom you have suffered so much. I have come back after 20 years. Telemachus cannot believe it. He says no man changes shape like that, from ragged old man to warrior in an instant, and that this must be some god's trick to make him suffer even more. But Odysseus explains that it is Athena's work, and tells him things only a father would know. Then at last, the wall breaks. Father and son throw themselves into each other's arms and weep together without words, with a deep and desperate crying, like the cry of a bird whose chicks have been stolen from the nest before they could fly. Telemachus embraces a father he does not remember because he was a newborn when his father left. Odysseus embraces the son he left in the cradle and finds grown into a man. 20 years of absence pour out in that embrace, and for a long while neither of them can speak. But there is no time for grief or celebration. The impossible must be planned. Odysseus asks how many the suitors are, and the answer confronts him with the scale of the problem. Not 10, not 20, but more than 100 young, armed men with their own servants besides. Telemachus tells him plainly that the two of them alone have no chance against such numbers. "We are 2 against an army, father. How can we defeat so many?" "We will not be alone. Athena and Zeus himself are on our side, and that is worth more than 100 men. When the time comes, you will understand." Odysseus then gives him the plan, and it is a plan of patience before strength. He will return to the palace disguised as a beggar, and Telemachus must pretend completely not to know him. However much he sees his father humiliated, insulted, even struck by the suitors, he must not react or give him away with a single look. He will have to swallow his rage and wait. At the right moment, the two of them will secretly remove the spears, shields, and swords hanging on the walls of the banquet hall, so that when the fighting begins, the suitors will find themselves unarmed and trapped. And one rule above all: no one, absolutely no one must know that Odysseus has returned. Not the male servants, not the maids, not even Penelope until the time comes. One slip, one loose tongue, and both of them would be killed. The plan is set. The king has returned to his island, has gotten his son back, and knows his enemy. Now all that remains is to enter his own house through the servant's door, dressed in rags, and bear in silence the mockery of the men who sleep under his roof and court his wife. The trap is beginning to close. The king of Ithaca enters his own palace through the servant's door, dressed in rags, and no one recognizes him. On the way to the hall, an old dog lying on a heap of dung lifts his head. It is Argos, the dog Odysseus raised as a puppy before leaving for war, now old, mangy, and abandoned. 20 years later, the animal recognizes his master beneath the disguise that fools every man. He has no strength to rise, he only wags his tail and lowers his ears. Odysseus, who cannot give himself away, looks aside and lets fall a tear in secret. And Argos, having seen his master return at last, closes his eyes and dies. Inside, the suitors feast on what is not theirs. The beggar enters to ask for scraps, and the men treat him like a dog. The worst of them all, Antinous, the ringleader, insults him and throws a footstool that strikes him on the back. Odysseus endures it. Telemachus, as they agreed, pretends not to know him and swallows his rage. The king bears the mockery, the blows, and the contempt inside his own house, measuring each enemy, waiting for the moment. Penelope, having heard of a newly arrived stranger, sends for him, hoping he might bring news of her lost husband. And the cruelest scene of the whole, waiting, unfolds. The queen converses at length with the beggar, not knowing he is Odysseus, her husband, sitting before her after 20 years. He invents a story for her, tells her he met Odysseus and that he is alive and near. She weeps, not daring to believe it. Because Penelope too has resisted with cunning. For 3 years she kept the suitors at bay with a deception. She promised to choose a husband as soon as she finished weaving the funeral shroud for Laertes, Odysseus's elderly father. She wove by day, and at night, in secret, unraveled what she had woven, so the shroud would never be finished. She fooled them for 3 years, until a servant betrayed her. Husband and wife, without knowing it, have survived with the same weapon, cunning. That night, Penelope orders the old nurse Eurycleia to wash the guest's feet, as hospitality requires. And as she does, the old woman discovers something on his leg, an old scar, the mark of a wound Odysseus received from a boar in his youth. She recognizes it instantly. She drops the foot suddenly. Her mouth fills with a cry of joy, and she is about to shout his name. But Odysseus covers her mouth with his hand and whispers an order. "Be quiet, nurse. Yes, it is me. But if you say a word, you will ruin everything and they will kill us all. Keep the secret." Eurycleia, trembling, obeys. The next day, Penelope makes a decision. Weary of waiting, she announces a trial to choose a husband. She brings out Odysseus's great bow, the one no other man has been able to handle, and sets up a row of 12 axes. She will marry the man able to string the bow and shoot an arrow through the eyes of all 12 axes in a single shot. It is, without her fully knowing it, the perfect test. Only one man in the world can do that. One by one, the suitors try, and one by one they fail. Not one of them can even bend the bow enough to string it. The wood resists them all. Meanwhile, Odysseus steps out of the hall for a moment and secretly reveals himself to the 2 servants he knows are loyal, Eumaeus the swineherd and the cowherd, and brings them into his plan. He has the doors of the hall closed and barred. The weapons that hung on the walls have already been removed. The trap is ready. Then the beggar asks to try the test. The suitors laugh and protest, outraged that a vagrant would dare touch the bow they could not bend. But Telemachus enforces his will, orders that it be given to him, and has Penelope leave the hall. Odysseus takes the bow and examines it calmly, turning it in his hands, feeling the wood and the string like a musician checking his instrument before playing, while the suitors mock him. And then, before everyone's disbelieving silence, he bends the bow and strings it in a single motion, without effort, as if it were a toy. He plucks the string, which sings high like the call of a swallow. He sets an arrow, aims while still seated, without even standing, and fires. The shaft passes cleanly through the eyes of all 12 aligned axes, one after another, and buries itself in the far wall of the hall without having grazed a single one. On the faces of the suitors, the mockery turns to dread. In that instant, everything changes. Odysseus tears off his rags in one motion, leaps onto the threshold with the bow in hand, and stands at last as the king he is. Dogs, you believed I would never return from Troy. You devoured my house, harassed my wife, and feared neither the gods nor the vengeance of men. Now the hour has come for all of you." And the slaughter begins. The first arrow flies before anyone can react and pierces the throat of Antinous just as he lifts his cup to drink. Wine and blood spill out together. For an instant the suitors believe it was an accident. Then they understand who the beggar is, and panic erupts. They run to the walls, searching for the spears and shields that always hung there, and find nothing. The weapons have vanished and the doors are barred. They are trapped in the very hall where for years they feasted. Odysseus, planted on the threshold, fires without pause, and every arrow brings down a man. When the quiver is empty, he takes up the spear, and beside him fight Telemachus and the two loyal servants, back to back, sealing the way out. The suitors try to organize, throw what few javelins they manage to find, overturn tables for cover. But Athena, from above, turns aside their throws, which bury themselves in the walls and the rafters without touching anyone. The banquet hall becomes a slaughterhouse, shouting, broken tables, cups on the floor, and men falling in their own blood. Cornered against the walls that witnessed their abuses, the more than 100 suitors fall one after another, until the last one stops moving and the hall holds only the heavy breathing of the 4 victors. Then comes justice for the traitors within the household itself. The maidservants who gave themselves to the suitors and the disloyal servants are punished. Odysseus orders the hall cleaned and purified with fire and sulfur until every trace of blood is gone. The house is his again. Only the hardest thing remains, convincing Penelope. Euryclea runs upstairs to wake her with the news that the beggar was Odysseus and that he has killed the suitors. But Penelope does not let herself be swept up by emotion. After 20 years of broken hopes, she fears it may be a disguised god or a new deception. She comes down, sits before Odysseus, and looks at him in silence, without embracing him, wary. Telemachus rebukes her for her coldness, but she has her own way of being certain. Penelope then gives a strange order. She asks the nurse to bring the marriage bed out of the bedroom and set it up outside for the guest. And on hearing it, Odysseus leaps up, indignant, unable to hold himself back. "Who has moved my bed? That bed cannot be taken out of that room. I built it myself with my own hands around the trunk of a living olive tree growing in the ground. One of its legs is the very root of the tree, planted in the earth. No one can move it, unless they cut down the trunk." And there is the proof Penelope needed. That secret about the bed only the two of them know. No god, no impostor could know it. The queen, who is just outmatched in cunning, the most cunning man in the world, bursts into tears, runs to him and finally embraces him. "Do not be angry with me. I had to be certain. For so long I feared someone would come to deceive me by pretending to be you. Now I know you are my husband." Husband and wife embrace after 20 years, and that night, together at last, they tell each other everything they lived through apart. She, her long resistance, he, his long voyage across the sea. But one last thread remains to be tied. The next day, Odysseus goes out to the countryside to find his elderly father, Laertes, who lives consumed by grief, and reveals himself to him as well, restoring him to life with his return. Meanwhile, the families of the dead suitors rise up in arms to avenge their sons and march against Odysseus. One last clash forms father, son, and grandfather fighting together on the same side. But before more blood is spilled, Athena intervenes, and Zeus hurls his thunderbolt between the two sides. The goddess imposes peace, the dead are avenged by the dead, and the hatred stops. So the journey ends. After 20 years, 10 of war and 10 of sea, after losing his 12 ships and all his men, after refusing immortality for a handful of earth, Odysseus has become again what he was before it all began. King of Ithaca, husband of Penelope, father of Telemachus, son of Laertes. The house is clean, the family reunited, the island at peace. The man who took a decade to cross a sea has come, at last, home.